Okay, hello YouTube. Today we're going to be looking at the Najdorf Sicilian, and more specifically, we're going to be looking at a line called the Zagreb Variation. So this happens after e4, c5, knight of 3, d6, d4, c4, knight d4, knight of 6, knight c3, a6 begins the Najdorf, and g3 begins the Zagreb Variation. So if you like content like this and you want to see more of it, please click that subscribe button and click on your notification icon. So my recommendation against this variation is to play the immediate e5, and I'll try to explain why in a minute. And then after knight b3, bishop e7, bishop g2, we're going to castle, and white's going to castle. So the main thing of this variation that I can tell is that basically what white's trying to do is white's trying to control the d5 square, and this explains why he's putting his bishop on g2. Now, my main objection to this is it doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense. Like, it makes sense that white wants to control the d5 square. This is one of black's primary plans, is to eventually push this pawn to d5 himself and break out and get a good position and prove that his pawn majority matters. So by playing pawn to g3, bishop g2, we've restricted that from happening, possibly indefinitely, and therefore we should just say, hey, white's got a slight advantage here. But that's not my issue with it. My issue with it is, what is white's forward-moving plan exactly? Because yes, we have restricted black from playing pawn to d5, but what is our plan with the white pieces to have an advantage or to declare that we have some sort of advantage with white? Because at no point does it seem plausible for white to actually ever place a piece on the d5 square. So for example, like let's say we just play bishop e6, controlling d5, rook e1, knight on b to d7. Let's just say, just for fun, nobody does this, but let's just pretend, let's play a fantasy game. Let's say that white decides to play the move knight d5. This move would actually be a mistake. No strong player actually plays this move. This move, I couldn't find it in my database. Nobody's ever done it, because it's a positional mistake. So if white ever does play a move like knight d5, we're going to take it. White's going to take back. Now, at first glance, you might think this is really good. We've taken and white's taken back, and he's extended the scope of his bishop on g2. Maybe this is why we put our bishop on g2. But after bishop f5, hitting c2, and then let's just say a4, rook c8, c3. We have to ask ourselves, like, objectively, let's just objectively look at this position and just ask ourselves who's better in this position. And the answer to that is black is better in this position. This position is definitely slight edge black. And the reason for that is when this pawn transferred from e4 to d5, it covered up black's only real weakness in the position. It covered up the d6 pawn, and it also covered up the weak square on d5. White can no longer plant a piece on that square because his own pawn is occupying it. So then we just have to kind of measure up who has better pieces. Black's bishop on f5 is actually doing something. It's on a diagonal, whereas white's bishop on g2 is biting on granite. So black is the one that actually has better pieces in this position, and black can improve his pieces further. So let's say, for example, h6 to get rid of black's dark squared bishop, also to make an escape square for the light squared bishop, a5, bishop g5, and we're just simply going to exchange off a couple of these bad pieces. And now we've reduced the position to this, where it's just our light squared bishop versus white's light squared bishop. And the only real question is, can white ever get his queenside pawns rolling? Because certainly, if white could ever play something like c4 followed by b4 followed by c5 and c6, this bishop would be a killer. You know, if we can get that queenside pawn majority really rolling down the board, our position could be decisive with the white pieces. But if you look at this position, that is never happening. We're never going to be able to play c4 or b4 without hanging something. If we play c4 here, the a5 pawn is hanging. If we play b4, the c3 pawn is hanging. There's just not going to be any way to do this effectively with black's pieces positioned the way they are. And that's not just a problem in this position, that's just a problem in general in these positions. It is almost never acceptable for that knight to go to d5. We could try another line. We could play a4, rook c8, and we could try knight d5 here, and it's going to be transposing to essentially the exact same thing. So we never really have an opportunity to do this. So what people try is they really try one of two moves here. They try either a4 immediately, or they try the move knight to d2. Both of which kind of have the same kind of aim, although a4 I think is a little bit more sophisticated. a4 is actually just trying to restrict black from also expanding on the queen side with b5. Knight d2 is just trying to restrict black from playing d5 in a very mechanical way. So for example, b5, we're going to have knight f1. We're just going to be trying to bring that knight to e3, focus it on d5. We're going to have bishop g4, f3, bishop e6. The game we're following here is Najdorf versus Carlsen, played in Germany in 2018. knight e3, rook c8, a3, knight b6, just focusing on the d5 square, but also he kind of had to because he needed to make sure that white couldn't put a knight on d5 and then recapture with a piece. That's the only thing that black is ever really afraid of, is if white can just put pieces on d5 and then just keep recapturing with pieces, and then eventually we're going to be left with a very serious problem because there's going to be a serious weakness on d5 that we can't do anything about. So as long as we make white recapture with a pawn, black will have an advantage if he ever does play knight d5. But also we have all the normal type of plans that we have in these types of positions, where we're planning on playing something like knight c4, maybe exchanging off this knight, maybe playing d5 down the road. So it's an open question as, okay, so what does white do to try to improve this position? In this game, white tried f4, and then after rook e8, king h1, bishop f8, f5, bishop d7, queen d3, we have h6, b3, bishop c6, and you can see what Carlsen's doing here. Now that this pawn has moved to f4 and then f5, he's now targeting this e4 pawn. He's putting pressure on the open c-file. He's preparing to play d5 and d4. He's preparing to ratchet up pressure on the c-file with moves like bishop b7. Basically, black is just doing really, really well here. So after bishop d2, we have queen c7, rook c8, we have queen b7, and then finally white tries to block stuff up. He tries to play knight d5. Carlsen was putting a lot of pressure on that e4 square, so Najdorf felt the obligation to play this move, but after a few exchanges, he runs into the normal problems that people run into in this position, which is, he's made black's pieces very, very good, and Carlsen was able to break out with the move e4, which ended up turning out well for him. After queen d4, knight e5, knight f2, we had knight f3, takes, c4, takes, rook e5, rook e3, takes, queen b2, and this position ended up being slight edge black, and it ended up ending very well for Carlsen a few moves later when he ended up winning a piece after Najdorf's attack did not work out. So that's an example of how things can go badly for white. Let's take a look at one more option that white has available to him other than the immediate knight d2. White could also try the move pawn to a4. So again, I'm going to recommend similar stuff. The downside of black's position here is that we're not going to be able to play an early b5. But we still have moves to improve our position that are fairly smooth. I recommend rook c8. We have knight d2. We have h6 is a very reasonable move. Knight f1, rook e8, knight e3. And now there was a game between Duda and Grishchuk that continued with the move queen c7. And I think that's kind of a lemon. I would actually recommend just simply the move knight to b6. This seems like a solid improvement. Again, we're playing for all the normal stuff here. We're playing to put our knight on c4. We're playing to eventually play the move pawn to d5, etc. So one of the points behind this move is, like, let's say they play something like a5. We can play knight c4. We can exchange off this material. And then after bishop e3, queen c7, black is actually doing quite all right here simply because we've eliminated one of our pieces. So that helps us maneuver kind of behind the lines. And in these types of positions, even though a lot of times the computer will give slight edge white in a lot of these positions, if you put the majority of this video on engine analysis, it'll give slight edge white for a lot of these positions where I'm praising black. And I don't have a problem with that because I'm not looking at the computer eval bar. What I'm looking at is who has a plan. Does white have a plan, and does black have a plan, and who has a forward-moving plan to improve their positions? And more often than not in these types of positions, it's black is the one with the forward-moving plan, and white's plan is seemingly just to prevent black from moving forward. And to me, that doesn't seem like we should count that as an advantage. All the computer's looking at is it's just saying, hey, white has a little bit more space, and therefore I like white. Whereas what I'm looking at is who has a better plan in this position and who can actually make progress, and 9 times out of 10 in these positions I feel like it's black. So that's how you should be playing these positions with the black pieces. You should be playing this early e5, and that's generally speaking the basic plans that you're going to run into and how you're going to execute them with black against this Zagreb variation. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and I hope you can use some of these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.